The announcement was like a storm breaking across a calm horizon. "Addison, after 16 years, your skills no longer match our vision," declared Emery, her expression unyielding on the laptop screen. "Your access ends today." Addison took a deep breath and replied, "I completely understand." Emery seemed relieved by her professional demeanor. The Zoom call had come out of nowhere, a sudden meeting with Emery Quinn, her team lead, and Jordan from Human Resources, who sat silently and observantly. Addison had dedicated nearly 2 decades to Pinnacle Dynamics in Boston, Massachusetts. She had single-handedly built their operations department, mentored countless junior staff, and navigated every crisis with unwavering calm. But Pinnacle Dynamics had shifted course. 6 months ago, a corporate overhaul ushered in new leadership and new agendas. Emery was brought in from outside, younger, ambitious, and eager to leave her mark. She scarcely took the time to understand their systems before initiating changes. And now, apparently, it was Addison's turn to be replaced. "We'll need your laptop shipped back by Wednesday," Jordan interjected, her voice carrying the practiced neutrality of someone who had delivered this speech many times before. "I'll email you the shipping details and exit paperwork." Of course, Addison responded, keeping her composure intact. "Is there anything else you need from me before I go?" Emery shook her head. "That will be all, Addison. Thank you for your years of service." The call ended abruptly, and Addison sat back in her chair, staring at the blank screen. 16 years, gone just like that. What Emery didn't know was that Addison had already accepted an offer as Director of Operations at Vertex Innovations, Pinnacle Dynamics' largest rival, starting Monday morning. 3 weeks earlier, Bennett Lawson, the CEO of Vertex, had reached out after catching wind of the changes at Pinnacle Dynamics. They had crossed paths professionally over the years, often meeting at industry conferences. "Addison," he said during their first meeting, "Pinnacle Dynamics is making a mistake if they're letting you go. We've always admired your operational expertise. We could use someone with your knowledge and experience." The offer followed a week later, featuring a generous salary increase, a directorial title, and the liberty to assemble her own team. Addison had signed the contract just yesterday. She closed her laptop and glanced at her phone. 2 messages had come through during the Zoom call. The first was from her husband, Riley. "How did it go? Call me when you're done." The second was from Bennett. "Office ready for Monday. Team excited to meet you. This is the beginning of something great." Addison smiled to herself. Emery had no idea what was coming. Addison met Riley 16 years ago at a tech conference in Nashville. He was presenting a session on network security, while she was there representing her former employer. Their connection was almost instantaneous over a coffee break, and the conversation never truly ended. 6 months later, they were married, and Addison had accepted an offer from Pinnacle Dynamics to relocate to Boston and build their operations department. The early years at Pinnacle Dynamics were exhilarating. The company was smaller then, agile and full of innovation. Addison had the freedom to implement her ideas, create efficient systems, and build something meaningful. Her team grew from just her to 25 talented professionals managing operations for a rapidly expanding business. The former CEO, Preston Hale, had been her biggest supporter. "Addison," he would say, "you're the backbone of this company. Without you keeping everything running smoothly, we'd fall apart." Preston retired last year, and everything changed. The board brought in Tatum Greer, a hard-charging executive from a larger tech firm with a reputation for aggressive growth strategies. Tatum wasted no time reshaping the company and her image. Longtime employees were gradually replaced with her own people. Emery Quinn was one of Tatum's first hires, 35 years old with an impressive resume, but little experience in their specific industry. The moment Addison had dreaded finally arrived, but it didn't quite feel like an ending. It felt like the threshold of a new adventure. She was overlooked despite her tenure and vast knowledge of Pinnacle Dynamics in Boston, Massachusetts. "We need fresh perspectives," declared Tatum in the company-wide meeting introducing Emery. "New blood to take us to the next level." Addison tried her best to adapt. She shared everything she knew, documented processes, and offered insights drawn from years of dedication. Yet, Emery seemed intent on marking her territory, dismissing Addison's suggestions and gradually excluding her from key meetings about operations. The writing had been on the wall. Today's Zoom call didn't surprise her, only the timing did. She had hoped for at least a transitional period. They did what? Riley exclaimed when Addison called him after the meeting. His outrage on her behalf was touching, albeit unnecessary. "It's fine, really," she reassured him. "This gives me the perfect excuse to take the weekend off before starting at Vertex on Monday." "You're taking this remarkably well," Riley noted, suspicion lacing his voice. He knew her too well. "Let's just say I've had time to prepare mentally," Addison replied. "And I might have a bit of satisfaction knowing that while Emery thinks she's eliminated a problem, she's actually created a much bigger one for Pinnacle Dynamics." "Remind me never to cross you," Riley laughed. "Too late," Addison teased. "You already did when you ate the last piece of chocolate cake last weekend." That evening, Addison sorted through her home office, sifting through materials from her 16 years at Pinnacle Dynamics. Most would be shredded. She had always been careful never to bring confidential information home, but habits from years of proprietary work were hard to break. She paused over a photo of her original team, 5 of them crammed into Pinnacle Dynamics' first real office, celebrating their first major client implementation. Preston Hale stood in the center, his arm around her shoulders, pride visible on his face. Of those in the photo, only Addison had remained until today. The others had moved on years ago. She wondered if any of them might be interested in joining her at Vertex. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sloan, her former mentee who had left Pinnacle Dynamics 6 months ago at the first signs of change. Heard the news, their loss. Drinks tomorrow. Thaxter's at 7. Addison smiled and replied, "You're on. I have interesting news to share." Sloan had flourished under Addison's guidance, transforming from an eager but inexperienced college graduate into a talented operations specialist. When she left Pinnacle Dynamics, several clients had inquired about her absence. Addison suspected Tatum and Emery had underestimated Sloan's impact, just as they had underestimated hers. Addison continued sorting papers, occasionally setting aside notes or documents that might be useful in her new role. Nothing confidential, nothing that would breach her employment contract with Pinnacle Dynamics, but the accumulation of wisdom and insight that belonged to her alone. Around midnight, an email arrived from Jordan in HR, Addison attached. "Please find your exit paperwork and instructions for returning company property. On behalf of Pinnacle Dynamics, we thank you for your years of dedicated service and wish you all the best in your future endeavors." The coldness of the generic message stung more than she wanted to admit. 16 years reduced to a form letter. She shut down her computer and went to join Riley, who was reading in bed. "You know," he said, looking up from his book, "I don't think I've ever seen you this calm after a major life change." She slid under the covers beside him. "That's because this isn't the end of something. It's the beginning." Still, Riley persisted. "You dedicated nearly 2 decades to Pinnacle Dynamics. You built something meaningful there. It can't be easy to just walk away." Addison sighed, acknowledging the truth in his words. "I'm not walking away from what I built. I'm taking the best parts with me, the knowledge, the experience, the relationships. Pinnacle Dynamics may have decided they don't need me anymore, but they'll soon realize how much they've lost. Their mistake is Vertex's gain," Riley said, squeezing her hand. And truthfully, Addison thought, it was time for a change. She had outgrown Pinnacle Dynamics, even if she hadn't realized it until now. That night, she slept more soundly than she had in months. The atmosphere at Baxter's was lively for a Saturday evening. Addison spotted Sloan in their usual corner booth, 2 glasses of wine already waiting. "There she is," Sloan called out as Addison approached. "The latest casualty of Tatum's regime." "Former casualty," Addison corrected, sliding into the booth. "Current victor." Sloan raised an eyebrow. "Do tell." Addison filled her in on her new position at Vertex, watching Sloan's expression shift from sympathy to delight to something like awe. "Director of Operations at Vertex." "Addison, that's brilliant," she exclaimed. "The look on Emery's face when she finds out, I would pay to see that." I'm not doing this for revenge, Addison insisted, though she couldn't help but smile. Of course not, Sloane replied, clearly skeptical. You're doing it for career advancement and to work with a company that actually values your expertise. Exactly. But the revenge is a nice bonus, Addison added with a grin. They clinked glasses. Sloane leaned forward. What's your first move going to be? Building a team, Addison said. Bennett has given me considerable latitude there. Interesting. Sloane swirled her wine. Any particular talent you have in mind? Actually, yes. Addison met her gaze directly. You. Sloane blinked. Me? Senior Operations Manager, reporting directly to me. 20% salary increase over your current position, plus better benefits. Addison slid a folder across the table. The official offer is in there. Bennett approved it yesterday. Sloane quickly opened the folder, scanning the document inside. Her eyes widened at the numbers. This is very generous, she said cautiously. It's what you're worth, Addison replied. I've always said you were underpaid at Pinnacle Dynamics. But wouldn't this seem like poaching? Sloane asked. Addison finished for her. Of course it is. But you left Pinnacle Dynamics months ago, so technically I'm poaching from Summit Partners. Still, Sloane hesitated. It will look like we planned this. We didn't, Addison said firmly. But I'd be a fool not to bring in the best operations specialist I know. And Bennett agrees. Sloane turned the pages slowly, considering. When would you need an answer? Take the weekend, Addison said. But I start Monday, and I'd like you there with me. Sloane closed the folder and tucked it into her bag. You know, I've always wanted to work with you again. Then say yes. I'll call you tomorrow, she promised. They spent the next hour catching up on personal news and discussing the changes at Pinnacle Dynamics since Sloane's departure. She confirmed what Addison had suspected. Morale was plummeting. Longtime employees were updating their resumes, and clients were growing concerned about stability. The Brooks account is particularly unhappy, Sloane mentioned. They've worked with you since the beginning, and they're nervous about the transition. Brooks Enterprises had been Pinnacle Dynamics' first major client. Their CEO, Finley Brooks, and Addison had developed a strong professional relationship over the years. That's good to know, Addison said, filing away the information. As they were preparing to leave, her phone buzzed. A text from an unfamiliar number. Addison, it's Finley Brooks. Heard about your departure from Pinnacle Dynamics. Very concerning. Can we speak Monday? Important decisions to make. Addison showed Sloane the message. Well, Sloane said with a low whistle. That didn't take long. No, Addison agreed. It didn't. The weekend was suddenly looking very interesting indeed. Monday morning arrived with a mixture of nerves and anticipation. She dressed carefully, choosing a confident but not ostentatious outfit. This wasn't about making a statement. It was about starting a new chapter professionally. Riley kissed her goodbye at the door. Go show them what they're missing, he said with a proud smile. The dawn of Addison's new career began with a sense of exhilaration and purpose. The Vertex Innovations offices occupied the top 3 floors of a sleek downtown building, offering a contemporary space with sweeping views of Boston. As she stepped inside, the receptionist greeted her warmly. Director Harper, welcome to Vertex. Mr. Lawson is waiting for you in the conference room. Director Harper. The title felt both exhilarating and a natural fit. Bennett met her with a genial handshake. Addison, right on time. Ready to meet your team? Absolutely, she replied, following him into a spacious conference room where about 15 people were gathered. Everyone, Bennett announced, this is Addison Harper, our new Director of Operations. Many of you know her by reputation. We're incredibly fortunate to have her joining us. The welcome was sincere, the introduction seamless. She recognized a few faces from industry events, but most were new to her. She noted a healthy mix of experience levels and specialties, a well-crafted operations department. And we have one more addition joining us today, Bennett continued, glancing at the door as it opened. Sloane walked in, looking both nervous and professionally poised. This is Sloane Rivera, our new Senior Operations Manager, who will be reporting directly to Addison. Addison fought to keep her expression neutral, though inside, she was overjoyed. Sloane had made her decision. After the introductions, Bennett gave them a tour of the facilities, ending at Addison's new office. It was a corner space with floor-to-ceiling windows and a door connecting to a smaller office that would be Sloane's. "I'll leave you to get settled," Bennett said. "We have a leadership meeting at 11 to discuss strategy." He paused at the door. "By the way, Finley Brooks called this morning. She'd like to meet with us tomorrow." Addison nodded, unsurprised. "I'll be prepared." Once Bennett left, Sloane slipped into her office, closing the door behind her. "So," she said, barely containing her excitement, "we're really doing this." "We are," Addison confirmed. "Thank you for joining me." "Are you kidding? This is the opportunity of a lifetime." Sloane glanced around the impressive office. "And not a bad place to land." "No," Addison agreed. "Not that at all." Sloane became serious. "You should know Pinnacle Dynamics is in chaos. Word of your departure spread like wildfire on Friday afternoon. The operations team is panicking. Emory doesn't understand half the systems you built. This was valuable intelligence." "How do you know all this?" "I still have friends there," Sloane said with a small smile, including Camden in IT. Camden Ellis had been with Pinnacle Dynamics almost as long as Addison had. He ran the IT department with quiet efficiency and had been a steadfast ally throughout her tenure. "Is he looking to make a move, too?" Addison asked carefully. Sloane shrugged. "He didn't say explicitly, but he did mention how frustrating it is watching Tatum and Emory dismantle working systems without understanding them." Another piece of information to file away. Addison would need to move carefully. Poaching one former colleague might be overlooked as coincidence. Systematically recruiting an entire team would be perceived correctly as a strategic attack. "Let's focus on getting established here first," Addison said. "We can discuss potential recruits later." Sloane nodded and stood to leave. "One more thing you should know," she added. "Emory's been frantically calling and emailing me all weekend, trying to figure out how to access your operational documentation." Addison smiled. "That's unfortunate for her. You didn't leave a transition plan." "I documented everything meticulously," Addison replied. "But understanding the documentation requires context that Emory never bothered to learn." The leadership meeting at 11 introduced her to the rest of Vertex's executive team. Bennett had assembled an impressive group, experienced professionals who asked intelligent questions and showed genuine interest in her vision for the operations department. The thrill of a fresh beginning pulsed through Addison as she navigated her first day at Vertex. "Addison," Bennett said as the meeting wound down, "tell us about your approach to client transitions, especially for companies moving away from competitors." It was the perfect segue into what everyone was curious about, the possibility of attracting Pinnacle Dynamics clients. "The key is continuity," Addison began. "Clients leave providers when their needs aren't met or when they lose confidence in the provider's stability. Our job is to show we understand their requirements and can meet them without disruption." She outlined her strategy with personalized transition plans, dedicated implementation teams, and regular check-ins throughout the process. "What we won't do," she emphasized, "is disparage Pinnacle Dynamics or any competitor. We focus on our strengths, not their weaknesses." The leadership team nodded approvingly. This was the mark of professionalism. After the meeting, Addison returned to her office to find an email from Finley Brooks confirming their meeting for the next morning. With years of history between them, Addison knew this wasn't just a casual check-in. Finley was seriously contemplating moving Brooks Enterprises' business from Pinnacle Dynamics to Vertex. Her phone rang, Emory Quinn's name appearing on the screen. She let it go to voicemail. Moments later, the notification appeared. Curious, she pressed play. "Addison, this is Emory Quinn," came the strained voice. "We need to discuss the transition of your operational knowledge. Some of the documentation is unclear. Please call me back as soon as possible." Delete. 5 minutes later, a text arrived from the same number. "This is unprofessional. The company needs your cooperation for a smooth transition." Addison smiled to herself, knowing Emory was realizing the repercussions of dismissing her on a Friday afternoon without a transition period. Later that afternoon, Sloane joined Addison in her office to review Vertex's current operational processes. She had already pinpointed several areas for improvement. Their system works, Sloan explained, but it's not optimized. We could implement some of the refinements we developed at Pinnacle Dynamics to increase efficiency by at least 20%. Addison nodded. Draft a proposal. We'll present it to Bennett by the end of the week. Her phone buzzed again. A call from Jordan in HR at Pinnacle Dynamics. She ignored it. They're getting desperate, Sloan observed. They're discovering that institutional knowledge can't be transferred in a day, Addison replied, especially when they didn't value it enough to arrange a proper handover. Are you going to call them back? Addison considered the question seriously. No, I fulfilled all my contractual obligations. I owe them nothing more. As the day went on, calls and texts continued from Emery, from Jordan, and finally at 4:30 p.m. from Tatum Greer herself. Each message grew increasingly urgent. The last text from Tatum was particularly telling. Addison, this is Tatum Greer. We may have been hasty in our decision. Please call to discuss possible arrangements. Too little, too late. By the end of her first day at Vertex, Addison had outlined a comprehensive strategy for operational improvements, scheduled meetings with key team members, and prepared for the next day's discussion with Finley Brooks. As she gathered her things to head home, Bennett stopped by her office. Productive first day? He asked. Very, she replied. I heard Pinnacle Dynamics is trying desperately to reach you. She raised an eyebrow. News travels fast in this industry. Always. Bennett leaned against the door frame. Finley Brooks called me again this afternoon. She's bringing her CTO to our meeting tomorrow. That was significant. Finley wouldn't bring her technical leadership unless she was seriously considering a change. We'll be ready, Addison assured him. The meeting with Finley Brooks and her CTO, Sawyer Grant, began formally but quickly settled into the familiar rhythm of their long-standing professional relationship. The meeting room buzzed with anticipation as Addison prepared to hear Finley's concerns. I'll be direct, Addison, Finley said after the initial pleasantries. Pinnacle Dynamics' recent changes have us concerned. When we heard you'd been let go, that concern turned to alarm. Sawyer nodded in agreement. The systems you built are integral to our operations. No one understands them like you do. Vertex is prepared to offer you a comprehensive transition package, Bennett interjected smoothly. Addison would personally oversee the implementation. Finley and Sawyer exchanged glances. We'd need assurances of continuity, Finley said cautiously. You'd have them, Addison promised. Plus improvements to the existing systems that I've been conceptualizing but couldn't implement at Pinnacle Dynamics. The meeting lasted 2 hours, during which they outlined a detailed transition plan. By the end, the decision was all but made. We'll need to review this with our legal team, Finley said, gathering her materials. But barring any contractual issues, I believe we have an agreement in principle. As they left, Bennett turned to Addison with an appreciative nod. That, he said, was masterful. Over the next 2 weeks, the pattern repeated with 3 more major Pinnacle Dynamics clients. Each cited similar concerns, uncertainty about Pinnacle Dynamics' stability, lack of confidence in the new leadership, and, crucially, their trust in Addison personally. By the end of her 3rd week at Vertex, they had successfully transitioned 4 of Pinnacle Dynamics' largest accounts, representing nearly 30% of their annual revenue. The news made waves throughout the industry. Vertex's stock rose. Pinnacle Dynamics' fell. Analysts began questioning Tatum's leadership and strategic vision. Through industry contacts, Addison heard that Emery had been demoted. The operations team at Pinnacle Dynamics was in disarray, struggling to maintain service levels for remaining clients. It wasn't personal, just business, but Addison couldn't deny feeling a certain satisfaction. The final blow came unexpectedly in her 4th week at Vertex. Camden Ellis, Pinnacle Dynamics' IT director, requested a meeting. I've been with Pinnacle Dynamics almost as long as you were, he said when they met for coffee. But it's not the same company anymore. You're considering a move, Addison stated, not as a question. Camden nodded. And not just me. There are at least 6 senior team members ready to jump ship. This was a significant development. These were people with deep institutional knowledge, the backbone of Pinnacle Dynamics' technical operations. Vertex would be interested, Addison said carefully, but this would have to be handled delicately. Of course, Camden agreed. We're professionals. Within a month, Vertex had added not only Camden, but 4 other key Pinnacle Dynamics veterans to their growing team. Each brought valuable skills and client relationships. Each transition was managed ethically but strategically. The industry took notice. Investment firms began questioning Pinnacle Dynamics' viability in the face of such significant talent and client drainage. 6 months after Addison's unceremonious dismissal via Zoom, Pinnacle Dynamics announced a strategic restructuring, corporate speak for significant downsizing. Tatum Greer resigned as CEO. Emery Quinn was among those let go. Bennett found Addison in her office reviewing quarterly reports when the news broke. "Congratulations," he said, dropping a newspaper on her desk with the headline, "Pinnacle Dynamics announces major restructuring. CEO departs." "I didn't do this for revenge," Addison said, though they both knew that wasn't entirely true. "No," Bennett agreed with a knowing smile. "You did it because you're the best operations director in the business, and they were fools to let you go." "Their loss," Addison said, "our gain." The revenge had never been the point, but it was undeniably sweet. As she drove home that evening, Addison reflected on the journey of the past 6 months. From the shock of dismissal to the triumph of building something even better at Vertex, she had moved beyond personal vindication to professional reinvention.